Welcome back to another video, everybody. It is currently, I don't know the time, but the date is December 27th. I went and saw The Rise of Skywalker December 24th. So I've had a few days to kind of mull it over. And last night, after editing a lot of videos and uploading them and watching the Great British Baking Show, because Netflix does not carry Chopped, because that's a big oversight. I was up late last night, kind of piecing together my thoughts on the movie and reading The Heroes of Olympus. I know I'm like 10 years late, but whatever. So I'm here today with my thoughts on The Rise of Skywalker. I have some thoughts posted here, the good and the bad. Let me start off by saying that I didn't hate the movie. I actually thought it was very entertaining. I thought it was enjoyable. And that's pretty much because I think that Rian Johnson screwed up everything so bad with The Last Jedi that there was no way that this movie couldn't be good. Some of the things that stood out to me immediately in the movie were like, you're not going to retcon The Last Jedi, but you're not going to agree with it. And that seems to be like the general consensus of most people. I've been watching a few reviews, on YouTube and stuff. I know a lot of people love it, and I know a lot of people think it's even worse than The Last Jedi, which I just completely disagree with because, I mean, like, first off, The Last Jedi was just boring as heck. It was so boring. Boring. And on top of that, you threw out all sorts of Star Wars lore and mythology and just, you kind of screwed it up. This one, I feel, didn't necessarily have enough of a punch to make me think it was the last movie of 40 years. By the way, if you hear all that rattling and stuff, that's a flagpole. I'm outside with my grandparents, so yeah, you're gonna hear the wind. Everything else inside is loud. So I digress. Back to Star Wars. Well, let's just go to my notes here. First things first, force healing. I know that's a thing in the extended universe, but that already in itself is a problem because the extended universe it's not canon in the movies anymore. So I disagree with that. And even in the extended universe, it's not to the extent that it is in the movie. It's more or less just like subtle things like stopping blood flow or producing more like white blood cells or whatever. It's not, you can't really heal your big wounds like that with force healing. So that was one thing that I had a problem with. I thought it was just kind of cringy and really useless in the movie. So I don't like that, but whatever. I can get past that one. Palpatine should be dead. Period. Like, he should be dead. First off, because he was thrown down a giant metal shaft. That alone is going to kill you when you hit the bottom. Second, if he even survived the crash to the bottom, the Death Star exploded. And even if the explosion didn't kill him, space would. And then on top of all of those, he never managed to learn how to save life, so to speak. Like, in Episode 3, that's kind of what he uses to lie to Anakin, saying, oh, I can stop death, blah, blah, blah. But then at the very end, when when Anakin just turns to the dark side, he says only one has ever been able to do it. And if we work together, we could. But they didn't. Because if they did, I kind of figured Darth Vader would have done it in order to turn to the light and be with his family, whatever. So that's one thing that really irritated me, along with Rey being a Palpatine. It would have been much cooler, in my opinion, if she was like a product of the Force, because Kylo turned bad, Luke had given up, So the Force should have just like created her and she would have been an embodiment of the Force. That just would have been cooler in my opinion. I don't like the fact that she's a Palpatine. I kind of hoped she was either a Kenobi or a Jinn? Like Qui-Gon Jinn? Whatever his last name is. Jinn. Which also wouldn't really work because that would be weird considering you have Jyn Erso, and that's just rambling. That's kind of annoying to me. That she's a Palpatine and just... I didn't like it. Anyway, Force Ghosts. How the heck did Luke grab a lightsaber as a ghost? Like, what? In no Star Wars cartoon, movie, or spin-off can any Force Ghost grab something physical. That is not ever done. And on top of that, it doesn't even make sense. Although I do like that scene when she throws the lightsaber and, he says that a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect, which is kind of a callback and a screw you Rian Johnson for The Last Jedi when Luke throws it away, which I think is just not hated on enough, personally. That's like a super strange statement for some of you to hear. I can just see people, but hey, they hate on that all over the internet. No, they don't hate on it enough. So, yeah, I'm going to continue hating on that as much as possible. So, Force Ghosts should not be able to catch a lightsaber. Speaking of lightsabers, I'm not really a fan of Leia having one and being trained. I kind of think that was just... I feel like that was written in there to explain how she could have pulled herself back into the ship after she was blown out of it in The Last Jedi, which I still hate that scene, and I continue to hate it, and I will never like it. So I feel like that was just put in there to say, okay, I'm trying to fix Brian's mistakes, but I don't know how to do it. So that was that. Skywalker's name. I do not like that Rey took the name of Skywalker in the end of the movie. I feel like the rise of Skywalker should have alluded to Ben Solo / Ben Skywalker rising from the dark to the light and eventually becoming one with the Force. I feel like that's what it should have been, which I think would have been much more redeeming to Ben's character, because I don't really like the character of Kylo Ren. He was good in The Force Awakens, and then he was kind of a big baby, constantly on the verge of crying his eyes out in Episode 8. And then in Episode 9, he was just kind of there. He didn't feel like he was one with the Force in the end of the movie. He didn't feel like he was part of the dark side in the beginning of the movie. His transformation to the light, I thought was really well done. I like the scene with him and Harrison Ford, or Han Solo rather, I like that it was like word for word dialogue of Episode 7, but instead of killing Han Solo, he turns to the light and throws his lightsaber into the ocean. That's another thing that I didn't actually have written here. The fight scene on the Death Star to me was like a recreation, but complete opposite of Mustafar, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting each other. Instead of Anakin and Obi-Wan, it's Rey and Kylo, and instead of avoiding lava, they're avoiding giant splashes of water. Yes, they're still on a giant metal structure, and it was just weird, and I didn't really like it. I thought it was kind of cringy, but whatever. I can get past that. And then, there's just not much to say. It was kind of a boring fight scene. I did like in that scene that was the way they kind of ripped Carrie Fisher's character out of Star Wars. I thought that was kind of fitting for her. So that's one good thing I have to say about the movie. Moving on, Kylo Ren's helmet should have stayed on from the very beginning of this trilogy. Like, he should never have taken his helmet off in the seventh one at all. Okay, like, ever. You know, she complains that she's being hunted by a creature in a mask, and he takes it off. I'm like, no, that shouldn't happen. And then he destroys it in episode 8. And then puts it back on with the red laser look, which looks really cool, I think, which is another reason I didn't want it to come off, because it looked really cool. I just feel like it would have had a much bigger impact that when he took his helmet off, like, I think if they kept his helmet on until the time until he turned to the light and then he took it off and you saw Ben Solo's face for the first time, I thought that would have been really cool, just because it would have been like a mystery through the whole thing, like, oh, you know, what does this guy look like? Kind of like Darth Vader, you know, in, I believe it's Empire, you kind of see him in his breathing room, you know, the big white room, and you kind of see the back of his head, and they put the helmet on, you don't see it anymore. I feel like they could have done that, and it would have been much, much cooler. So his helmet should have stayed on, like, completely. It would have been fine without the red lasers, but whatever. I think that it should have stayed on through the entire trilogy until the very end. Reylo. No. It was so cringy and forced, and no pun intended, I'm sorry. It was just so terribly written in the end of the movie when Ben is about to die. He just saved Rey's life using the Force healing, which I've already mentioned that I don't like. It's just, I never liked the idea of Reylo. I didn't care if Rey ended up with Finn or Poe or literally anyone else. I just didn't want her to end up with Kylo because that was just weird. And just didn't like it at all. So, meh. Next one, Finn's love life. What the heck is going on with that? Like, people, please, if you're gonna have a wannabe romance story, make it good and believable, please. Like, The Force Awakens, you can tell that he's all over Rey because, well, she's attractive, she's nice, she's the first human that he's ever met, and he's just trying to figure things out, and, you know, like 5 minutes after he meets her, he is in love with her, whatever. That part was just bad about The Force Awakens, but that, you move on, and then you have the same thing in The Last Jedi, when he likes Rey, but Rose likes him, and that could have caused like an interesting love triangle. I kind of think that would have been, you know, funny in a weird sort of way if it was written well. And then in The Rise of Skywalker, he falls in love, or sort of, I guess, like, there's an attraction between him and this other stormtrooper girl. I forget her name, but there's like definitely an attraction between them, and that was also really jarring in the movie. You know, I liked the character. I thought she was pretty interesting, but there's nothing there for me. You know, it's like this whole movie is kind of like the Avengers Endgame in that it's a whole bunch of fan service for Star Wars. Because there are a lot of fans that wanted Reylo, there are a lot of fans that didn't, but there are a lot of fans that never wanted Finn to have a relationship. There are fans that did. I didn't care either way. So that was just kind of like an interesting, kind of annoying thing in this movie. And you know what? I'm going to see if I can, like... Is that better? My face is like is so shadowed. This one's the light, this one's the dark side. Anyway... I didn't like Finn's love life kind of thing, and they kind of allude to it again in this next problem, that he is force sensitive. I just have such a huge problem with that. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? You are a former stormtrooper who has known nothing your entire life except battle. You were taken from your family as an infant, raised to be a stormtrooper. You rebel against the First Order, which in my opinion should still just be the Empire. That was a complaint I had about this entire trilogy. I'm not going to go there though. I'm just going to keep moving on. Sorry about that. Terrible sounds. Just the Force sensitivity does not make much sense to me. It's like you've had it. If you at least want to say that, if you at least want to use one of the most overused sentences in Star Wars, you could just say, I have a bad feeling about this. Now, Finn does say that a couple times, it's like, oh, I have a feeling. But that doesn't mean you're Force sensitive. That just means you have a gut feeling that millions of other humans have. I'm not saying that you can't be Force sensitive, but it just does not make sense, and it kind of it's like, JJ, at least say that he's Force sensitive in the movie. That way, people aren't thinking that he was trying to say that he loves Rey. And really, that's the last thing that he was about to say to Rey, the girl he's crushing on, when he's about to die. What? Like, what the heck are you thinking? It's like, oh, I'm about to die, Rey. I'm Force sensitive, girl. You know it. And can you feel the chemistry between us? Yeah. That's because we got Force, baby. Yeah. We are like friends. Yeah. Force. I feel it. Like, seriously, that is like so bad. Such bad writing right there. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've kind of rambled on about the bad stuff for a while, so I now want to get to the good stuff. First thing on the list of good things is the couple of screw you Rian Johnson moments when he kind of like rebuilds the mask and, kind of throws shade at Rian Johnson, saying he shouldn't have crushed the mask or whatever. That I really liked. And then also the one I mentioned earlier where Luke catches the lightsaber and says a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. I really thought those two scenes were really well done. And I just hope it makes Rian Johnson feel like an absolute idiot. So, there's that. Lando in this movie is so good. I mean, when I was in the theater, the guy sitting next to me started crying when Lando came out on screen. I mean, I was just filled with nostalgia. He's like, yeah, Lando's back. But this guy next to me, he's like crying his eyes out. And I'm just like, okay, I really like this scene, and you've just taken me out of it. Can you stop crying? I'm just like, I like the scene, but you're kind of ruining it for me now. Stop crying. But like, aside from that little, annoyance in the movie theater, I was just like, I had the biggest smile on my face. I bet you if my parents saw my face, they would have been like, what the heck is our kid doing? Like, why is he smiling like such a dork? And, I just loved seeing Lando. So that was pretty good. And then the next thing I like is like Finn, Rey, and Poe's chemistry together. I thought they bounced off each other really well. The chemistry between all three of them I thought was pretty good during the scenes that they were together, which is something that was sorely missing in The Last Jedi. One thing that I did like about The Last Jedi was that they were kind of introduced at the very end, and it kind of set some things up for The Rise of Skywalker that I really hoped was done well, and it was. I really like the chemistry between them, and I think they're pretty well. I think they work well with each other. So that was one thing I liked. Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. Okay, I cannot be mad at Mark Hamill ever. You know, like he he is Luke Skywalker and the Trickster from The Flash. I mean, just like those, and the Joker. I mean, I love him as the Joker in the animated series. But like, I can never actually dislike Mark Hamill's performances anywhere. I can never dislike it. And his performance in this movie, being as bad as The Last Jedi was, he was good in it, and being as in the middle of the road as this movie was, he was fantastic. Even though he didn't have much of a part, he was still really, really good. And on top of that, I just constantly support Mark Hamill, and when he, smashes Rian Johnson, like, you can't do this to Luke Skywalker, that's not what Luke Skywalker is, and, he takes sides with the fans, like myself, and, like Geeks and Gamers, Brown Table, Movie Flame, all the fans, he just takes the side of them, and he, just doesn't like Rian Johnson's portrayal of Luke Skywalker at all. So that was one thing I really liked. Carrie Fisher, she was not actually in the movie. It was scenes from The Force Awakens that were cut, and then she was, I believe she was digitally put into the movie. I mean, obviously she would have had to be digitally put in the movie because they're not the same scenes for the same movie. But I really liked what she had done in the movie. I thought that was really good. And the last thing I liked, which is going to wrap up this video, is the Force voices that Rey hears in the end of the movie. It didn't hit me as hard as some of the other scenes from some of the past movies would have. Like, some scenes that really hit me in the original trilogy are when Yoda is giving Luke the lesson, do or do not, there is no try, size matters not, and he just he does things in a really cool, stoic way. That's one of the scenes that really hits me. Another scene that hits me is when Yoda dies or not dies, but like passes on into the Force in Return of the Jedi. I really like that scene. But even though the voices didn't hit me as hard as those two did, I still really liked it. There was a lot of nostalgia from hearing Ewan McGregor, Alec Guinness, Sam Jackson, Liam Neeson, Hayden Christensen. There was even the voice of Ahsoka. That one, I was just like, yeah, Ahsoka. Even though we never see her become one with the Force. I mean, that was weird, but I still enjoyed it. And Kanan from Rebels, that was pretty cool. So I like that part, those parts of the movie. Overall, I think that the sequel trilogy is useless. I would be totally okay if it didn't exist. Do I like Episode 7? Yes. Do I like Episode 8? No. Never will. Never going to. There is nothing good about that movie. Do I like Episode 9, and will I eat broccoli? That's the question. Yes, I do like Episode 9. Only in comparison. So, as fun and entertaining as the movie was, I think that merits enough for me to eat a few pieces of broccoli, and I will be live streaming that as soon as I can, because I have no broccoli in the house. Because it's terrible. So I hope you enjoy watching me go through hell eating broccoli. But that's gonna wrap up this video, and I hope you liked it. Leave your thoughts on the movie in the comment section down below, and I will see you later. Bye.